This is Harrowings Live. This podcast is with J.A.W, who's over in Japan right now. I just found out he showed up, in the little chat I was doing impromptu because Origin has a migraine today and couldn't show up. So I was just jawboning with Ara, the Grok app that allows me to chat a little bit with Grok 4.1, doing research for me. And I've been talking about the root cause analysis of a recent suicide bombing in Islamabad, but you wanted to come on and talk a little bit about some protocols, right? And I'll leave it over to you to
I
introduce yourself.
suppose.
We just met. Go ahead.
So I am a medically retired Marine that lives over in Japan. There's nothing particularly fantastical about me. I'm just a regular guy. But I did end up writing a book called Discard Doctrine, Relative Protocols After 8. And I have two theses that are currently looking at being published in the Marine Corps University Press and the Marine Corps Gazette on conceptual pedagogy and trying to switch over the current SAT system over to a more conceptual primacy centered education for Marines, because I feel like it gives more attentiveness to a class, and it doesn't really factor in like some of the things that we go through the K-12 pipeline, where especially nowadays people will be so much more focused on the social aspect of high school as opposed to the actual learning process and learning the skills that they need in order to be able to get on in life.
Well, that's a fact. I mean, high school, my God, that was the most terrifying and confusing kind of bumper car thing for me. I mean, the intellectual content was definitely on the back burner.
Yeah, it was basically void.
Yeah.
I credit that to more the fact that in the American education system, we have a very like factorial way of trying to get people to a comparable level of education. Uh, in the literature, this is called losing the word right now. It's basically just going from one thing to another to another to another. It's this system.
Kind of linear.
Everything's a system. Yeah, it's very linear. It doesn't really teach you the concepts that make these things true. So oftentimes, I think the perfect example of this. Are you familiar with Giotto of Florence?
Giotto of Florence, the painter?
Yes, the
Giotto?
painter.
That one.
You know about Giotto's O?
Tell me about it.
So, Giotto's circle, there's a story that goes way back in about the 15th century where the Pope at the time was commissioning for the roof of St. Peter's Basilica to get like renovated. And so there was a courier sent out throughout all of Italy, going to each artist in order to be able to get like masterpieces and basically compete for this commission.
Right.
When they got to Giotto of Florence's studio, Giotto just created a perfect circle, free-handed in less than 5 seconds, handed it over to the courier and said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said that once the Pope sees it, he will understand. Pope sees it and he earns the commission.
Okay. There's more.
So that's a perfect example of that's what concepts do for people. If you're able to demonstrate conceptual mastery, fundamental mastery, as opposed to anything else, you'll be far better off in the world of skill acquisition, et cetera, et cetera. We have the same exact process over in the Marine Corps marksmanship program, where when we get brand new recruits into boot camp, into ITB, we will teach them the individual concepts in context to what they're actually aiming for. And so that gives us a far better, what would you call it? Gives us a far better turnout rate for our marksmans than the general population. You get a guy that's like maybe 22, 24 years old that goes into a random shooting range and he gets taught by a coach that never really learned the concepts and just did everything intuitively. They would be far better off just going into the Marine Corps and going through their marksmanship program. I'm not advertising by any means of a stretch. This is just factual. They'd be far better off to just learn marksmanship from the Marine Corps, because over there we just teach the raw concepts and say, hey, shoot the target. Of course, there's a lot of things that come before that with getting like comfortable with handling a weapon in the first place. That's a whole entire point of drill. But aside from
Okay.
that,
So how does this extend further? I take it you've taken this into the idea of a more general concept, and the book is going to go through how many protocols, or what did you
it's
say?
about 4 protocols. It's
Four?
about four protocols.
You want to walk us through?
So there's a protocol of leverage. There's a protocol of fundamental primacy. Then,
Okay.
as I recall, it goes into just being normal, just interacting with people regularly on a daily basis. And then the fourth one is basically just a top all. It basically says, don't think you're special for doing any one of these particular things, because at the end of the day, it's erroneous to assume that you're far better off than the next person behind you or the next person in front of you.
Yeah, yeah. That's sort of like a invitation to get humble quick.
Very quick.
Don't think of yourself as special. And I love the fact that, when I was growing up, I was a member of the Fife and Drum Corps in Colonial Williamsburg. I talk about that a lot. And our music master had been the youngest drum major in the history of the Scots Guards. He had joined as a boy soldier into the British Army at like the age of, I've forgotten, really young, like 9 or something like that, and was put into the Scots Guard barracks and basically broken down and then rebuilt on that new foundation.
Mm.
Is that what you find was the experience as a Marine to some extent?
Mm, not
You
particularly.
get
3
that
months is not
look,
enough in
get
order to
that
be able to
mystery.
achieve that.
Right. Of course, and you're taking a young man who's a lot older at that point, but the Scots Guards, was a Guards regiment, and he ended up being a drummer to the royal households. But he took us as young men coming in at 11, 12 years old, and we would be in until we were 18 when we graduated. It was kind of an unusual organization in the aspect that the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation just took the child and gave them everything, equipment,
Mhm.
training, everything. And having been trained by somebody who had that kind of background, we all basically were put into the uniform and we knew exactly how to execute. We had simple rules for complex performance with high quality. That's the way I break it down. Does that resonate with
Simple
you?
protocols are always best.
Right. Just really simple, straightforward. These are the basics. And if you, I don't know if you're familiar with drumming, but rudiments. You've got a
Mhm.
flam, you've got a paradiddle, you've got a 7-stroke roll, you've got a 15-stroke roll, whatever. And you put them together, write them a cue, and they actually sound like what they are, right? A flam is "Pra."
Mm.
So you can put the rudiments together, and if you just, wanna tell somebody how to play it, say it's flam, flam, write them a cue, paradiddle, flam, or something. I'm not a drummer, I'm a fifer, but the idea is to get the message across and achieve a goal, right? You're always trying to make sure you achieve the goals that are set up for you. So we've got a few people joining here. Haji, and please keep me in your prayers. I'm losing my faith, is one person said that. I don't know if you have something there to go into.
I don't particularly.
All right. I don't know who this person is, but that's fine. Never seen them before. We've got some others that I have seen before. So let's go on to your book some more. Talk to me about these protocols and, walk me through the content.
So I think the important thing to note would
Mhm.
be that the thesis of the book is what comes after logical exhaustiveness. And there's a
Okay.
what would you call it? There's a Buddhist logical tool that was coined first by Nagarjuna and then fulfilled by Kanjakirti. which is called the tetralemma. It's
That's a
basically
level.
a four-cornered logic.
Okay, got
For
it.
anybody who's not familiar, the four-cornered logic it is not, it is both not and is, and it is neither is or is not.
All right.
So one of the issues that came with Kondrakirti is that he presupposed that emptiness was the aftermath of it. He basically said, well, if all four of these things are the logical exhaustiveness, then you have to presuppose that all of those things are both it is not, it is both, it is neither, and then take that to its logical exhaustiveness. And so that was something that I coined as being the cutoff. Basically, the point at which the ground that you stand on does not exist. It is best coined as a cliff that has no end. So
Uh-huh.
you jump off and you just keep on falling, you keep on falling. Or you were always on that cliff to begin with and you keep on falling.
Well, we certainly
And
falling.
there are similar sentiments to that that are in history, which is surprising. You would assume that it was an isolated case, but it really isn't. You can see it in so many other things. So, in Neoplatonic thought, the last of the Athenian school of Neoplatonism, Damascus, also came to the same exact conclusion. He said that the ineffable is both ineffable and neither is ineffable. And then after that, it was Zhuangzi in classical Taoism,
Okay.
Meister Eckhart with his Godhead. Uh, who else? And then you also have Longchenpa in Tibetan Buddhism. Then you go into like formal systems, and this is the real caveat here. You got Gödel's incompleteness theorem. You have Alex Turing, and then you have Paul Cohen's forcing. All of those things are they're not saying the same exact thing. They start from very, very different disciplines. And to assume that they are both synonymous with each other, all 8 of them are synonymous with each other is erroneous at best. Likewise with myself. I'm only synthesizing the things that they said.
That's right.
I have a different thesis that's being worked on that says that, after the cutoff, you need to have a negational tool in order to be able to solve that, and in order to make sure something doesn't become more than what it is. And that is something that I'm coining as being jurisdictional negation.
Jurisdiction
So,
negation.
yes. So after logical exhaustiveness has already been completed, you ask the question, what does this govern and what is its scope? And if it cannot answer those questions without properly defining its loss conditions, etc., then it has to go into either one of 4 categories: govern, delimit, demote, or discard. And discarding is not negation in the classical sense. It's just saying that you re- you leave it alone without any kind of replacement. And then also jurisdictional negation works reflectively on it itself. Um, so with the 8 witnesses out of the way, the protocols, if you will, it is basically just keeping everything very relative. You do not control anything beyond yourself. You can
Doing
basically
that.
imagine it as like a sort of severed stoicism. Stoicism severed to the metaphysics.
Okay. More?
And you you can go even further with ethics. You can utilize these things towards ethics. I think a perfect example in today's day and age is the Republican and Democratic Party.
Okay.
You fall on either 2 ends of a political spectrum. Very, very rarely do you ever find someone that's truly in the middle. Usually people's cognitive biases will shift them farther left than it will right, or farther right rather than left. Me, I personally don't care about politics. It's not within my realm of control. Even if I do have a vote, I'm only one stick in the haystack.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept right there. I think that most of us feel like we're kind of powerless and we're only one stick in the haystack. But it's kind of like that old adage. I'd forgotten who said it. Who said, if you don't think you have any power, try sleeping and you're too small to make a difference. Try sleeping in a room with a mosquito. Right.
That's certainly something.
I mean, I think we all do have the power we have, and we make choices, and everything impacts everything else. So I do think we have personal responsibility for the world we are co-creating, as we do this dance with each other, right? I don't
Absolutely.
know, man. I just know how it seems to me. So that's my philosophy in a nutshell. So I don't know, man. I just know how it seems to me. I could be wrong. I'm willing to listen to your perspective.
Well,
And that brings
discard doctrine does not preclude personal responsibility. You absolutely do have a responsibility to be so one of the primary things is just being decent for decency's sake, because
weird.
it's the least conflictory. It's the least conflictory state of mind. Just being decent to the people around you.
Mm.
It is far better than just being a hedonist in the modern day. And you see it especially with Jeffrey Epstein. The
Well,
guy's demonized on social media right now,
yeah, of
and
course.
wellfully so.
I don't know. It's just how it seems to me, and it does seem to me that way, but I'm willing to, hold out that there's probably more than meets the eye here.
Of
There was a
course.
guy named Robert Anton Wilson I follow pretty closely. I don't know if you've been crossed old Bob's path, but Robert Anton Wilson said, "I don't believe anything, but I have many suspicions." Full stop.
I
And
would agree.
right? But my suspicions, you know, maybe they're true, maybe they're not true. There may be logic being in that space. So your tetralemma was interesting. And, reducing it, I think you were talking about like taking things to their nth degree, going through all the iterations you possibly can of a particular system. And it all shakes down to what? Is
It
that
all
what we're
shakes
talking
down
about?
to effectively, it all shakes down to nothing.
Right,
You cannot come to a conclusion.
right. Because of
If there
good old
is a God, then it
completeness.
does not require your belief.
Yep.
Let, let,
Cool.
so let's go into the God talk. I don't know what kind
You
of
want to do
religious
a God talk?
denomination
Okay,
you're a part of.
cool, man. I love that. It's one of my favorite topics. I would go with "Thou art that" these days. I believe that we are each iterations of the one, and we have an opportunity to influence each other for the better or for the worse. But we're doing this dance and this mask thing, right? If you've read Alan Watts at all,
I have read Alan Watts.
there you go. And I don't have to say much more about it. If you know the book, "The Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are,"
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
kinda like that, and if I realize that everybody is like that, right? There's no privileged center. It's all a sphere. You ever do Nicholas Fancusa? No. Yeah, he was one
Unfortunately,
of the
no.
people, I think he may have been the one who coined it first, that God is an intelligible sphere, whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere. I like
No. So Carl Jung also produced that same exact sentiment after a interview that he did with the NBC.
Oh, yeah,
He sent out
yeah.
a letter and
Belief?
he wrote it in Latin
Ah,
that God is a center whose circumference is nowhere and whose center is everywhere.
exactly. Yeah.
Very familiar with that one.
Right, right.
It's a hermetic thing. It's a hermetic thing.
Yeah. Okay. I
So
love Hermes.
with
Hermes is like my deity of choice. The trickster,
if
you know? He's also a
if
messenger.
I had one to subscribe to,
Yeah. Which one?
so if I had one to subscribe to, it'd probably be Odin. I
Odin.
think the
Hooah.
belief of Odin is a very interesting one.
Yeah, I'm a direct
So
descendant, according to Ancestry.com.
ditto.
Aren't we all?
I suppose it becomes pretty amoebus when you trace things back down that long.
Well, actually, there's that pedigree collapse. You're familiar with that? And also,
Yeah,
apparently,
yeah.
about 70,000 years ago or so, there was Toba, the explosion of this Indonesian island that apparently reduced us to about 6,000 breeding pairs. So We're going through that bottleneck. You know?
Very crazy.
And
Very
we're not
crazy
very
stuff.
genetically diverse is the long and short of it. Kinda like cheetahs.
So,
Well, cheetahs aren't either. Anyway, go ahead.
yeah. Yep. So if you were to presuppose Odin as a mythological thing
Yeah.
within purely a paganistic sense, it can become reasonable to assume how it was so easy to transition the Vikings over into Christianity
Yep.
because of the way that Odin is designed. You know, the god with hundreds of names.
Mhm.
Um, it would have been very easy for missionaries to be like, oh, Woden has so many names. So if you were to look at the entire Nordic pantheon, you could presuppose, hypothetically, at least within the discourse of many of these missionaries, that Woden was in fact the entire pantheon and that he was just disiluding you. So he came over to us in the form of Jesus Christ, and then he went back to the one. That's why you should change over into our Christianity because Woden actually came to us,
Yep, Mayor
which is
Baba would probably agree. Are you familiar with Mayor Baba by any chance?
I am not,
Oh,
unfortunately.
Mayor Baba was the avatar of the age, in his latest iteration, and that we know of. Then again, there are a
Mm.
lot of God men out there, right? But this was a really interesting one. Have you ever, heard the Who's album Tommy or seen the movie?
The Who's album, Tommy?
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with the Who's. I've just never listened to the album.
Yeah, Tommy is, rock opera, right? And, there was a movie made of it as well about 1975. I saw it when I was a kid, about 12 years old, and it's about basically Pete's following of Mayor Baba, who was this guy who born about 1895, I think. He dropped the body in 1969. I think that's right. Um, and he didn't speak between, like, 1925 and dropping the body in 1969. He used an alphabet board, though, and he traveled in the West as well as traveled extensively, around the world with his mandali, as well with him, which were like disciples, mandali, like having a mandala. And,
Mm.
when I was at Randolph-Macon, one of the people who was, sponsoring Amnesty International and waging peace sort of extracurricular things and was director of religious life at the college, had been part of his inner circle. So he had, like, to put me
Mm.
2 degrees from Pete Townsend as well as as Mayor Baba. But the Baba followers, Baba lovers, basically just, um, believe in Mayor Baba being the avatar of the age, and that his message to humanity was that he was going to bring us all together like beads on one string.
Mm.
And, I kinda like that idea. A lot of people don't know about it. His one of his main mantras was "Don't worry, be happy." You remember the Bobby McFerrin song by any chance from the '80s?
Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
that actually comes straight out of Mayor Baba, and Bobby
Really?
was articulating that through that song. It's
I
very
had
silly and
no idea.
uplifting and stuff, but that's Mayor Baba's message to us is, "You don't have anything to worry about." I mean, God's got control of everything, and all of this, can't go on forever, as Pete Townsend says, "This war in a ring. We gotta bring us together like beads on one string." That's a song that he did in, 2020, I think, right about the pandemic period. The kind of unexpected Who album was launched that's called The Who, and it has a lot of things in there. But just about everything Pete writes is based on his faith in Mayor Baba that he picked up in the '60s. Um, he Rolling Stone had a picture of Mayor Baba on the cover with an article Pete Townsend wrote about that actually sometime around 1970 or so, right after Mayor Baba had dropped the body. But there's still a center for that. There's still work going on. It's kind of subtle. There's a center in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and there's another one in California. There are a lot of us sort of sprinkled out, and it's like one of those more of those esoteric things, right? He wrote a book called God Speaks. It was published about 1950 something that sort of tells the story of involution as opposed to evolution, involution. and how ultimately destined everybody is to merge with the one again. We're basically drop souls out of the ocean of all. And it's a similar message to one I was getting from my old German professor who would smear chalk across the board at the beginning of every lecture he gave, every course he was giving, and said, "This is the all, and we are individuated out of the all, the Apollonian and the Dionysian, dynamic, and we're all looking for reintegration into the ecstasy of being." I don't know. I find that in
So
music and dance and things like that as opposed to anywhere else. Go ahead.
it is an incredibly amusing thing, and
Yeah.
it is also very novel. It touches with the human invariant so much that we immediately feel compelled toward that image. What I say is
Yep.
that to even presuppose a one being is to put in and install a remainder. It does not remain true
Right.
to the nature of its own self.
Right.
If you were to run the tetralemma on it, it is the one. It's not the one. It is both
Both and.
the one,
Yeah.
both and
Yeah.
it is neither and.
That's
And
where
then it cuts
Leibniz got
off.
it wrong, right? He got the binary thing of ones and zeros, and then, he sent it off to the Emperor of China, who came back with a Latin translation of the Tao Te Ching. And then
Definitely.
so it's not either or. I see your point, but we see it this way, both and. Anyway,
So, I mean, let's take an apple for an instance. I don't have an apple with me, so I can't use an actual
we'll
object. But
visualize
let's
particularly the
presuppose an
apple of
apple.
Eris. Can we make it the apple of Eris that says Callisti on it?
Sure, it has the letters Callisti on it.
You know that story, right?
I do not.
Eris
Please.
was not invited to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, which would have resulted in Achilles being born, by the way. But
Mm,
Achilles. Anyway, since Eris wasn't invited, the goddess of discord and strife and chaos, she was pissed. And so she rolled a golden apple into the party, the wedding party, and it arrived at Zeus's feet. And it says, "To the fairest" on it. He's like, "Oh, shit. I'm going for this one. Here, Hermes, find me a mortal to judge who's the fairest of our goddesses here because I'm not touching that." And so Paris has to do the judgment of whether it's Aphrodite or Athena or Hera. And of course, he picks Aphrodite because Aphrodite bribes him with Helen, the wife of Menelaus, who then is abducted by Paris, taken to Troy in the Trojan Wars, and we have Western civilization.
mm.
So Eris is the goddess of chaos, strife, and discord, is basically responsible for us, and that's why I picked the golden apple as opposed to just any old apple. Go ahead. We got an
Okay,
apple. We got an apple.
so we've got an apple. We can perfectly shape this apple. We can understand its own machinations. We can route it. Like we can say we know how every single fiber moves along inside this apple. We understand the purpose of an apple tree having an apple. We can also say, hey, we understand what's the make of the skin. But once you come to very specific whys and hows, it starts to become unanswerable. Like, why? The skin of the apple. Well, of course, it's supposed to be there in order to protect and act as a barrier to the seeds. We can answer that much. But you ask again, why the skin? Why that one in particular? Why its particular shape and design? How did the tree know that this was the most efficient way in order to reproduce? You don't really have an answer for that. So it just goes ad nauseum.
Mhm.
You can keep finding reasons and you can kind of come to a logical conclusion based on that tree's evolution. We're not presupposing involution in this case because it's a tree. And we cannot assume that it can look inward to itself, but you
Very
never know.
pissed.
But then all of a sudden, that always comes along as well. Why is that? So you assume that it does know the exact way to make this apple the most efficient way possible in order to reproduce. It does not know the most efficient way to reproduce. It
Huh?
both knows. It neither knows. Then you reach a cutoff, that logical inconclusiveness, where you have to grapple with the idea, I do not have an answer to this. And so then you ask the question, where does it govern? It totally governs within the realm of biology. Then that's the only remainder that it needs. This question only remains in the center of biology, and it does not need an answer because
Uh-huh.
eventually you're not able to come to a final answer. So you have to just accept it. And then you have to follow that linear pattern. So with the case of the apple, you can keep asking why, you can keep asking how, you can keep routing along how far that bridge goes, but you have to understand eventually that bridge just does not have an end. You will keep walking along it in a very linear fashion. So, in order to be able to properly diagnose that apple, you need to be very relative with the apple and not presuppose that the apple and its machinations are the divine product of a god, because then that assumes a derivative.
Okay.
And also, Romeric Janelle, I'm also in Japan. It's very late. It is
What time is?
almost 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, I don't wanna keep you up all night, but we will, definitely dig into some of these concepts in the future, I expect. Apples reminded me of Johnny Appleseed. Do you remember the story of Johnny Appleseed from your childhood, perhaps? Did you ever encounter
So,
him?
somewhat familiar.
Yeah, basically went out and, traveled and was an orchardman, so he was responsible for a lot of those apple orchards throughout the, Ohio River Valley, that type of area. I think he was also spreading Swedenborgianism. Have you touched on Emanuel Swedenborg in your travels yet?
I have not.
He's
I
interesting.
have more to learn.
He's unusual. He was a Swedish scientist, but he had, some sort of, like, midlife kind of fever dream situation that gave him, like, access to the spiritual world. And there's a whole church of Swedenborgianism around here. There's one over on 16th Street, actually. I've not gone over there yet, but one of these days, I'm thinking I might investigate it. I'm by training a Methodist, and I'm otherwise just sort of like a wanderer in the field of awareness and the cosmos because I've got no clue what's going on here. I just think, like I said, I don't believe anything. I just have a lot of suspicions. And Carl Jung, you might probably know, and he was asked if he believed in God. He said, "Believe? I cannot believe. I
I
either
know.
know something or I don't know, or I don't know it." You know, but he knows. And have you ever run into the Gnostic Jung? It's a book
I
about.
I have. I actually have all of his books right over here. I have
Well,
his
this is
black
not his.
books.
This is a book about him and the Seven Sermons to the
Oh,
Dead by Stephen A. Höller, and it jumped out at me from the window of Lost City Books over on Adams Morgan here in DC. One day, and I decided to take it home and read it because it seemed to call to me. Sometimes books do that, and I realized I've got to read this thing. Similar thing happened with a book called Beyond the Robot by Gary Lachman. Have you run into Gary Lachman yet in your travels?
I have a few times just in passing.
He's got a lot of books, right, out there about all kinds of stuff. The Beyond the Robot is about the life and times of Colin Wilson, who wrote a book called The Outsider in England, and, really a good. I haven't read The Outsider itself yet, but the Beyond the Robot I have, and the idea with Colin Wilson, it sort of blends with G.I. Gurdjieff. Are you familiar with Gurdjieff and the work?
I am a little bit.
Okay, and this sort of ties back to one of my, favorite writers these days, Robert Fripp, who actually is the lead guitarist of King Crimson. But he got into the Gurdjieff work through J.G. Bennett, and after he broke up King Crimson, and he sort of went off the grid for a while to really work on himself. to really get down to figuring out, like, what am I? I like to think of myself as an imp that's carried around inside the animal that gets me from dawn to dusk and back again. And as this imp, and an imp is a great Nordic kind of, you know, pantheon kind of spirit and doesn't it's kind of mischievous, doesn't really
And
mean
then
harm.
Christianity ended up borrowing it.
Yeah, I don't really mean any harm at all, but the imp is also kind of like a demonic kind of thing, but as in the daemon in, more Greek kind of parlance.
Mm.
So I don't know, man. There's a lot of interesting areas to explore in this esoteric area, and I'm just scratching the surface. That's what Harrowings does. It scratches the surface of the field, so you can plant stuff and see what sprouts. I'm so glad you reached out to talk today.
Mm.
I know that it's late, so I better let you sleep.
Oh, no, I'm perfectly fine.
Are you like
I
to
stay
stay up
up
all
late
night?
all the time. I'm able to continue on going for as long as you're able to. I think it's
Well, good.
very, very good for me to dissect a mind like yours.
Yeah, I think we ought to talk more, and, bring it back again. It's about 36 minutes. Does anyone have any questions? We got very interactive sections. Kudos to Hal. Thank you, Vincent and J.A.W.
I'm very down to answer questions.
Yeah, are there any questions? 'Cause you said you're getting this book, through the Marine Corps Press, was that right? Or
Oh, no, no, no.
you're
So the
look
book has already been released,
Yeah, it has
through
been.
Amazon KDP. It's only
Okay.
$15, currently free on Kindle, and it's also free on Substack if you just look through my posts.
Can you write it in the chat? Can you see the chat?
Yes, I can.
And just write the information there for people saying, "Look it up," because 'cause I'd like to look it up too, and then I'd have more, like, informed questions to ask.
Well, it's also for free on my Substack, so you can read it for free through the
Oh, cool.
posts. It follows along with the transmission rules at the very end because I licensed it, that it's basically free and open to be forked and rewritten for freely.
Interesting. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun,
Um, so
particularly if I can find the time. I got so many interests that are, like, begging for my attention, including the taxes. I gotta get
can't even do taxes because the government's closed.
Is it closed? Did it close
Yes.
again? When did it shut down? Today?
Uh, no, 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 no. It shut down like 5 days ago in lieu
Oh,
of the Epstein files being opened up.
I thought hmm, okay. I missed that. I don't know how I missed that.
Yep. So nobody's getting
Here
their
in
taxes done
Washington,
right now.
DC, I have to have you in Japan telling me this stuff.
I
Yeah,
keep up to date with the news.
I try. I mean, I knew about the Islamabad thing. Anyway, let's see, discard doctrine. There it is. After 8. Alright. Well, thank you
It's a
again.
very vague name.
I'm gonna head it. I've gotta get something coffee and get my day started actually because over here in DC, it's, 10 something. No, it's 11:01. So I've got about an hour before I've gotta drop into something else. Thank you very much for taking the time. I'm very glad I took the risk of just saying, "Hey, I'm just gonna let this guy in. I don't know who the hell he is. He could be whack job. I don't know." But I'm always
I appreciate
game
it
to talk.
greatly.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're onto some good stuff. Sounds like to me you've investigated a lot of the similar lines to mine, but you know a lot of things I didn't know. So I really appreciate you bringing some more knowledge to the table, and, yeah, keep on plowing.
If I could, just to leave
Yes,
an
please.
end statement. So one of the primary things that sort of brought me to this was so I'm 24, just for context. Um, when I was about 11 years old, I had a very disassociative uh, experience. I was looking at my hand and I was asking, what is it that controls this hand? And for some reason, uh, I ended up starting to have a very disassociative experience.
Hmm,
My hand became an alien to me and it became very confusing on why is it that I am the one that is able to move this without any kind of like, I don't have to think about it. So it was essentially just a dissociative experience through isolated inquiry. which is very abnormal within the clinical world because most people have dissociative experiences through drugs, through alcohol, through other meaningful ways. That's how
Fast.
most people get to it. So it's not entirely special. The experience itself does not make me special. It was just that it triggered my mind in such a way where I started to think about these things. So I do not attribute to myself any kind of theological position, any kind of political position, and anything of the sort. I focus on what I can linearly solve. And so for me, in my case, so I've done scuba diving, I've done marksmanship. I was actually a coach. I do martial arts. Currently, I'm a purple belt in jujitsu as well as a black belt in judo, et cetera, et cetera. And throughout all of those things, I have primarily, I have taken it upon myself to disregard any kind of novelty. So I'm not necessarily too focused on what kind of techniques I could be using or what kind of gear I could be using. I'm focused on making sure that I'm fundamentally sound. Fundamentally sound. In scuba, for me, that's just making sure that I maintain a neutral buoyancy. And that's the only thing that I'm ever focused on during a dive. It's never just like looking out inside the ocean. Of course, that's like a benefit and seeing all the wildlife that comes with it. Entering into a brand new world. Or in jujitsu, I'm not necessarily focused on the techniques that are specific to half guard. I'm more focused on my weight distribution,
Mhm.
making sure that I'm understanding force vectors and
Yes.
understanding that any kind of like unbalanced position that I put myself into, it can be properly, and I would say it should be, in all cases, be punished because that's where the real improvement comes from. And one of the greatest things of
Yeah.
discovering this
Mhm.
One of the greatest things of discovering this was that if you just focus on the fundamentals for drumming, that would be the rudiments. If you just focus in on the rudiments, if you just focus in on the fundamentals for maybe a good about 6 months until you become competent in your rudiments, you can kind of give the illusion of talent. All of a sudden, people will frame you as this amazing, just
Mm.
once in a lifetime talent just by you just focusing on the rudiments.
Yep.
That's in essence what talent is. But if you actually focus on what are the rudiments, you're not really practicing in any kind of special way. You don't have any special skills. You're just focusing on the shit that works.
It brought to mind this one, Becoming the Instrument, which is by Kenny Werner, who's a jazz pianist. Lessons on Self-Mastery from Music to Life. And he wrote another one called Effortless Mastery, which a friend of mine is an improvisational musician, touted as being one of the most seminal works that he'd ever read. I've got others too along those lines. This one's a great one. It says, segue from the music lesson called The Spirit of Music by Victor Wooten. Bass.
Ooh, Victor Wooten.
You know Victor?
Of course, I'm a bassist.
You are a bassist. Okay, great.
Yes. I don't have a bass right now because I had to sell it before I left Hawaii, my last duty station.
I see. I've got a bass around here somewhere. I don't know where it got to. It's over there, I think. Actually, I've got 4. I don't know why I have 4. Just accumulated them. When you get older, things just accrete. As you can see behind me, there's a lot of accretion. I'm thinking it
Well, if you can see right here,
well,
I've got plenty of books myself, but
very
I don't
good.
have as many bookcases as you.
Yeah, these are actually just some old IKEA shelves that are just sort of storing a lot of CDs as well. I've, like, got all of Dave's picks. I got very completist with the Grateful Dead,
Mm.
because it's all improvisational music, right? And,
Are you
it's a lot.
familiar with Tool?
Tool, yes, I am, actually, we've been talking
I
about Tool lately. Danny Carey, is playing with Beat lately, the drummer.
really now. I
Yeah.
have all of their albums on this shit. This is my favorite one by far, but this
Yeah,
one's also really good.
Which one's the favorite? What's the title?
Lateralis, of course.
Okay. I've gotta actually get into their stuff because I never listened to them, but when I saw Danny Carey got the drum chair for Beat. Were you familiar with Beat yet?
I'm not familiar.
It's Adrian Belew and Steve Vai with Tony Levin and Danny Carey, and
Mm.
together, they're doing the 1980s King Crimson songbook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they're on tour. I don't know if they're coming to Japan or not, but they are on tour in Europe this summer. And I saw them, like, last year here in DC.
Tool was actually on tour out here around December.
Okay. Yeah, there
I
was,
missed out.
yeah, there was,
I unfortunately missed out.
I'm sorry. The woman who was next to me in the front row for the Warner Theater where I managed to buy myself a seat, she was very much into Danny Carey. She was a Tool person, not at all a King Crimson person, but, apparently he's got a hell of a following. And we got some other stuff going in there. I miss Tool and POS and BMTH, all of them. Okay. Henry Nex. Why you all talk weird? Reply not needed. It's very interesting things coming in from this person. I recognize your speech. I think they might be translating, not positive. Anyway,
Potentially.
it's potentially. So very interesting to see what kind of things emerge from the chat from time to time. Oh, the person says, "Guys, how to get some sleep" was the first interaction I saw, and I said, "How to get some sleep? Close the eyes, stay still." I don't know.
Maybe take some melatonin or eat a kiwi beforehand. Who knows?
Yeah, there's many ways, but I had problems sleeping in the past, and it's no joke when you can't sleep. Um,
Yeah,
you go without it
I
for a
had that
long
issue.
time. Talk about dissociative.
So here, I'll grant you a little bit of history on me.
Okay,
So when I was in the Marine Corps, one of the particular deployments that I had was on the USS America. I never saw combat or anything like that, but I have been a part of a humanitarian mission, which was very interesting. And I did that on this USS America trip. So when you're on ship, I was only getting about like 4 hours of sleep per day. We were working so damn much.
yeah,
And like half the time, I couldn't even sleep 4 hours at that. Like, it was almost impossible. I would sleep through 2 hours, maybe 1 hour in intervals,
not enough.
probably because of the systemic stress with it. But on this particular deployment, we went to the autonomous state of Bougainville. Now, prior to this deployment, I was
Oh,
assigned to uh, Victor 1-3, which has now been redesignated over to the 3rd LCT, which is the 3rd Littoral Combat
Bougainville,
Team.
is that New Guinea?
Yes, it's in New Guinea. It's the autonomous state of Bougainville over in Papua New Guinea.
Gotcha.
And so we were there to respond over to the eruption of Mount Pagana around June 14th of 2023, and we got there around August 3rd in
Yeah,
order to be able to supply aid to the people of Bougainville.
interesting.
And the part that people don't talk about is the fact that the only reason why we went there in the first place was because we were in port in Brisbane, and there was a Chinese humanitarian ship that was within the same nautical mileage as we were, adjacent. So they were about as far out as we were to Papua New Guinea, but they were farther up north. And so we had to bolt it. We had to, completely disregard our port call and just booked it over to the Cape of Torquay. And we landed in the same exact place that those Victor 1-3 Marines, the 3rd Marine Division, landed in during World War II.
Wow.
So that was like, oh, bringing back all those good memories of being a part of Victor 1-3. I've finally been a part of like the history of Victor 1-3, except I'm not in Victor 1-3 anymore.
Interesting. You brought back a memory for me of Gulf War One when my friends were who were serving were out there. One was on the howitzer team in the Marines, major in Kuwait near the oil fires, and the other one was flying for the Ace of Spades, VMA 321 or something like that. Forget the number. It's not coming back to me right now. But anyway, the
It
Ace
could
of
have been.
Spades,
It could have been.
and they were flying those Harrier AV-8Bs into into the Republican Guards, just bomb trucking. And can't imagine, these guys I grew up with and fifing and drumming actually, and then they end up doing that. I did not go into the Marines myself or anything else. Military after fifing and drumming was the closest thing I got to. That's not the same. I rose to the rank of sergeant, and then I went to college. And when the opportunities looked like maybe I should go into it, but I just didn't do it. And sometimes I regret that because, there's a lot to this esprit de corps, I would say, that one develops, and particularly with Marines. So my hat's off to you. Thanks for the service. I'm going to let you go so I can get my stuff ready for my next thing at noon. But I really appreciate it, and let's do it again, okay?
Absolutely.
I'm really enjoying talking, and we'll take a look at your book so we can dig into that. I've got to make sure. Just send it to me in a chat too, please. I would really
I
appreciate
will.
it. I'll lose the live chat when we end here. So thank you all for joining. Anything final word?
No, not particularly.
All right. All
I'm
good.
never about finals. No ultimates.
Yeah. Just keep on. That's the main thing.
Keep on.
Breathing as long as possible. It's a secret to a long
Keep
life.
on going until you can't go.
Yep. All right. Thanks again. Really appreciate it. By the way, I don't even know your real name, but I'm Hal. You're
I'm Jonathan.
Jonathan. Nice to meet you. See ya.
Nice to meet you too. Yep. See ya.